Hello, I'm Paul Evans and I'm working with the Frozen Ark to design a virtual ark. And in case you're wondering, this is my friend Rocket here, and he's going to be looking after us during this workshop, make sure that we're all okay. Okay, so a virtual ark. We're doing this to help people learn about endangered species. And like Noah's Ark, the aim is to help preserve these endangered species from the dangers, the many dangers that they currently face. And the more that we learn about the dangers that these species of animals are facing, the more we can do to help them survive. So today we're going to be thinking about how we might design a virtual ark. And as you probably know, architecture is the means by which we design houses and buildings, and we're going to call that architecture. That's the means by which we're going to be designing and thinking about what our virtual ark might look like and how it might work. What kind of spaces we might put our endangered animals into. And what we're going to need you to do, we're going to need you to send us good, clear pictures of your sketches and models, your architectural models, to wendy@ourbigpicture.co.uk, along with your name and age. So I'm Paul Evans, I'm an artist, and here's an example of a piece of art that I made about animals a while ago. Animals are often my source of inspiration. I'm very interested in them. I have been since I was very young. And I've also been involved in a number of kind of conservation and environmental actions to try and help keep them safe. So this is a piece that I designed a while ago, and it's about butterflies. And each time the butterfly's wings open and close, the species changes. Okay, so a virtual ark. What might a virtual ark look like? So as I say today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be thinking about what a virtual ark might look like and how we might design it. We're also going to be looking at two endangered species which are local to Lincolnshire, the hedgehog and the water vole, and think a little bit more about the particular dangers that they face, and think a little bit more about the kind of habitats that they live in, the spaces, the environment that they live in. But when we think about an ark, we often think about Noah's Ark, and we think about the tale from the Bible. And here's a little extract from that story, which is being illustrated here. So pairs of all creatures that had the breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals going in were male and female of every living kind. So here we see Noah's Ark, beautiful painting here, and the animals going in 2 by 2. So, but we're not necessarily thinking about our ark as being a boat as such. It might be more like a zoo, perhaps, or a kind of a wildlife park, something like that. Or it might be somewhere, like an internal space, something like an aquarium, even, where the animals can kind of live in their habitats. And to give an example of what it might look like, here's a work of art that I worked on some years ago with young people from schools in South Yorkshire, and this is called Virtual Social Science. And it's a gallery of art that was created by the young people. Well, ideas and sketches were brought into the studio that made this. We worked with some graphic designers to build this. And here's some examples of some work that the young people created in a cartoon workshop, some sketches that they made, and a few thoughts that they wrote into speech bubbles. And then we turned these into these fantastic 3-dimensional works of art. And here's a workshop that we had, creative writing workshop, which was about banter, that kind of playful kind of exchange that you might do in the playground. playful way of talking and exchanging information. And what we did was we got them to write how they might banter with their friends in these speech bubbles. And then I think this probably is a good illustration. This photo is a good illustration of what the virtual art might look like in a way. We're going to be having models of these endangered species, which you'll be making, which you might have made already, and these are going to go into the habitats, the environments that these animals might live in inside the Ark. Okay, so let's think of an example of an animal that was once quite common actually to Lincolnshire, the hedgehog. Think about its habitat, think about the kind of dangers that it's currently facing in its environment. Okay, so hedgehogs live in woodlands, grasslands, and also man-made habitats, including farmland, parks, and gardens. Very often you might see a hedgehog in your garden or even on your street. They're omnivores. Omnivores, that's a great word, isn't it? They eat whatever they can get into their mouths: slugs, millipedes, earthworms, beetles, caterpillars, and other insects, and they eat fruits and mushrooms as well. And sadly, the population has declined quite a lot in the last few years. So in the 1950s, there were 30 million hedgehogs in the UK. Now there's about 1 million. It sounds like a lot, but in actual fact, that's not an awful lot compared to the population that we once had. And they're on the IUCN Red List, which means that they're endangered, vulnerable to becoming extinct. And if you look at this picture on the left here, that shows you where they live around Europe, including the UK and Lincolnshire's around about here. Okay, they're threatened because their environment is being, it's basically being built on, really. They sometimes are threatened by natural diseases. They're often subject to being run over. Insecticides are a big problem because they're killing off the animals that they eat, all those creepy crawlies that they eat. And sometimes the places where they live are getting basically drowned by the rising of the water levels as a result of climate change. And what can you do to help? Well, the main thing is not to use pesticides where you can in the garden, because it kills the insects that they eat. What you can do is you can pile up a few leaves. If you've got a garden, you can pile up a few leaves and some twigs and things, and that's somewhere where the insects that the hedgehogs eat can live. You can you can build a little hedgehog house in the garden, and what you can do is you can make a kind of hedgehog runway by putting a hole in your fence, and the hedgehogs can get through that way. Check out the Hedgehog Friendly Campus, which is a website where you can find out more information about how to help hedgehogs. And then another good place to look is hedgehogstreet.org. You can become a hedgehog champion. And what Hedgehog Street is trying to achieve is to find out where hedgehogs are being sighted. And here's a map of Grimsby and Cleethorpes. And as you can see on the map, there's a few little hotspots here where hedgehogs have been found. So yeah, do check out hedgehogstreet.org and maybe become a hedgehog champion. Okay, let's get down to designing a virtual ark. This is a place where we'll be creating habitats, places for our endangered animals to live. As I say, maybe not necessarily a boat, but I mean, like, a boat might be a good place to start. Maybe think about when the animals are going in here, into our ark, what kind of spaces have been made there by Noah for these animals to live. They'll need something to eat. They'll need They'll need vegetation to sort of to hide in. What sort of spaces inside the Ark do you think animals need? Now, when we were thinking about this, we had a workshop about a year ago with the researchers that work at Frozen Ark. We were thinking about this, and we were thinking about what kind of design, what kind of like floor plan almost, our Ark might have. Now, when you've got an idea in your head, that's great, but it's even better when you get that idea out into the world so that people can look at it and think about it and talk about it. So here's an idea on a piece of paper. And the idea is an idea that Darwin, the famous evolutionary scientist, had many years ago about how evolution might occur. And his idea was that the simpler animals start at the base of a tree, and as they become more complicated and in a way time works towards the present day, you'll find man here at the top of these branches, and all the other animals basically evolve along these branches off the main stem of the tree. So that's Darwin's idea there. And he's thinking, I think that maybe years ago, simple animals started evolving and they spread out as they become more complex along the branches of the tree. Okay, so that was an idea that we had for how we might design our virtual Ark. Two of our researchers thought that'd be a good idea if our virtual Ark was like the tree of life. And we start at the bottom and we follow the branches along to where the animals that exist today can be found. And as we see here, we've got a sketch. So that idea has come out of somebody's mind and onto a piece of paper so that we can see it. And that's what we want you to do. We want you to think about what our Ark might look like and sketch out your idea. What might our Ark look like? Have a think, get an idea in your head, maybe talk about it, get it sketched down as a piece of paper so that we can see it. It's great if it's in your head, but we want to be able to see it so we can discuss it and think about it ourselves. So the first idea we had was for a tree of life Ark based on Darwin's tree of life. And here we see that two-dimensional sketch being made into a three-dimensional model. And as you can see, what they're doing is they're cutting out sheets of cardboard. And as we can see, they've kind of bent these sheets of cardboard and put little cuts in them so that they can be fixed at right angles like that to the flat surface. Okay, and there we have it, our fantastic tree of life Ark. And as we can see, we can almost follow evolution from its beginnings here along the branch to our hedgehog here, along another branch to our spider, and then along another branch to another animal here. And I think they're thinking about these things here kind of represent, maybe bedding, for the animals on the Ark. Here's another idea. The idea was that the visitors to our Ark could basically get in a hot air balloon and then float around above a number of islands. And on each island, there would be habitats for our animals. And this is an island under construction. And as you can see, they put some vegetation on it to create a habitat for our animals. And this is what our balloon ride virtual Ark model looks like. As you can see, there's various islands. There's some animals in the sea, a lovely sea turtle here. And here we have a kind of urban environment. Because don't forget, we tend to live in cities, but we've still got wild animals living in our cities. Animals like hedgehogs. The third idea that I'm going to show you is the idea of a kind of fridge. And on each in each drawer of the fridge, there's a different environment. And as we can see at the bottom here, I think we've got something like a desert environment, some desert plants and a snake there. And at the top, actually, to be honest, I'm not too sure what's going on here, but as you can see, there's various environments on these different shelves in the fridge. So what we'd like you to do is to have a think about what your ark might look like and how the animals might live in the ark and what kind of habitats the animals might live in your ark design. Okay, so I'm going to leave you now with one more example of an animal that lives in Lincolnshire, the fantastic water vole, referred to as Ratty in the wind of the willows. He's referred to as Ratty. He's not actually a rat. He is a rodent, but he's a very special and lovely little creature. And they're quite common in Lincolnshire. It's like the kind of last stronghold for them. They're kind of hanging on in there in Lincolnshire. So water voles live in burrows along the banks of rivers, ditches, ponds and lakes, and also marshes and wet moorland. Water voles eat grass and other vegetation near the water, reeds and plants that grow in the water. They'll also eat fruits, roots, bulbs and twigs. Very occasionally, they'll eat creepy crawlies, invertebrates. The water vole population has declined in a very similar way to the hedgehogs, and they're now classified as endangered in the UK Red List. What do you think might be threatening water voles? Well, one of the main threats they have is that they're building houses and shops, etc., in the places where they should be living. So that's in the areas close to the rivers, and livestock grazing as well. So now the fields are coming right down to the edge of the water, and this means that the water voles can't build their burrows. Pollution is also a problem. Rivers, streams and ditches, nasty chemicals going into those waterways. Also, one of the big threats to the water vole is its arch enemy, the mink. Here we see a mink. It looks like an otter, but it's not. Mink were brought to Britain in the 1920s. The American mink was brought to Britain in the 1920s so that, well, basically for fur farms, so that people could have these fabulous mink coats. But they began escaping quickly. They're very bright animals. They began escaping quickly, and they've been breeding in the wild since the 1950s. Now, a female mink can fit very nicely into a water vole burrow, and unfortunately, once a mink is in a water vole burrow, the water voles can't escape. They can't get away, and they can't defend themselves against this very strong and powerful predator. Now, mink are being controlled across Britain. They're being trapped, and the numbers are being controlled, but there's still a bit of a danger to water vole populations. So if you're thinking about the arch enemy, the water vole, here she is, the mink. So what can be done to help the water vole? Farmers and landowners can look after the riverbank habitats and maintain the vegetation on the banks of the river to provide food and cover. And charities can create conservation projects to better protect populations. An example is the People's Trust for Endangered Species, the ptes.org. And if you're interested in water voles, then check out that website. It's got lots of really interesting information. And one of the things you can do is, if you see a water vole, you can report it. And then we're through those sightings, we get to know more about water voles, and we can do more to protect them. Okay, so please send us your models of your ARK designs and help us design a virtual reality experience. We need good, clear photos of your models, if you make them, and sketches in particular. Those ideas that you've got in your head about what a virtual ARK might look like on the inside and how we might create habitats in the Ark for the animals, we need to see those sketches and ideas. And if you can send those to wendy@ourbigpicture.co.uk along with your name and age, I really appreciate it. It can help us build this Ark, and we can use that to let people know more about endangered animals and how everybody can do a little something to help save them from becoming extinct. Because once they're gone forever. If you want to know more about Frozen Ark, the biobank, which is behind this project, then check out the website there, www.frozenark.org. If you want to know more about Our Big Picture, then check out their website, www.ourbigpicture.co.uk. And if you want to follow us on Facebook, we've got a Facebook page at the Virtual Ark. Thank you very much for spending a bit of time with me today. Do send us your pictures of your sketches and models to wendy@ourbigpicture.co.uk along with your name and age. And so I'm going to say goodbye now, and I hope you enjoy working on your sketches and models, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them.